the first A-plus prospect since Sidney Crosby.
Look at that move by McDavid.
There's a glimpse of not what is, but what will be.
What a move! What a goal! You have a player that will transform your franchise.
We know who the Oilers and Sabres have their sights set on. So what will the rest of the draft board look like?
That's 2 for Strome.
Pavel Zacha scores the goal. A lost season gives Elise a shot at number 4.
Mitch Marner walks in and scores.
And there's plenty of talent to be had for the rest of the Canadian teams. The Draft Preview Show is next. Welcome to Bob McKenzie's Draft Preview Special with the guru himself, Bob McKenzie. Well, this might be the most anticipated draft in a decade. Not one, but 2 generational players up for grabs. And after that, a whole lot of talent. And I guess, Bob, that's where the first question comes in. You know it's going to be McDavid. Then you know it's going to be Eichel. But after that, a whole lot of talent, a whole lot of uncertainty.
Well, you're absolutely right. There is an air of unpredictability after the top 2 picks. But I mean, when we look back on this draft, it is going to be, make no mistake about it, the Connor McDavid draft. An unbelievable generational talent, but you're absolutely right. Jack Eichel is something special too. It'll forever be remembered as the McDavid-Eichel draft, but there is a lot of unpredictability after those top 2 picks. A lot of different elements, defensemen, power wingers, centers, prolific centers for other teams to consider once the pick starts at number 3 with the Arizona Coyotes. It's also interesting, in our top-ranked 30 players on the TSN list, only 11 Canadians. That's a low water mark for quite some time, but by the same token, that's just a cyclical thing. The other aspect that's really interesting is the Russian factor. We have 4 Russians ranked to go in the first round. I'll be interested to see whether that actually happens or not. Ivan Provorov from the Brandon Wheat Kings is a top 10, potential top 5 pick, but I'm going to be interested to see where Evgeny Svechnikov, Denis Gurianov, and Ilya Samsonov, the big Russian goalie, if they go in the first round, or whether the Russian factor is still at play here, but the return of the Russians in the first round.
All right, before we get to the list, let's get to the rankings and see where the top teams slot in. And Buffalo had the best chance to win the top pick. However, Edmonton striking gold again. They have the top pick. Buffalo at number 2, Arizona at number 3. And then when you look at the Canadian teams, the Toronto Maple Leafs going through that complete rebuild. They are in great position to pick up a stud building block at number 4. They also have a pick at number 24. Calgary Flames sitting at 15. You got the Oilers at 16. The Winnipeg Jets, 17, Ottawa at 18. Well, the numbers are silly. The skill is off the charts. He's pretty much a sure thing. Connor McDavid is a generational talent. Some would say a gift to the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe that's why they're calling him Connor McSavior. He's number 1 on Bob's list.
Connor McDavid.
He really made an emphatic statement that he is the number 1 guy.
Scores! Connor McDavid with a fantastic goal!
The combination of skating speed, hand quickness, and mental processing is extraordinary.
You're not going to catch Connor McDavid with that breakaway speed. He's in a roll. Connor McDavid scores! David has a chance in front. Look at that move! Oh, baby! That's what they came for!
This young man could be unstoppable.
You can watch McDavid highlights over and over again, and they still become more impressive every time you see them. We've been talking about this guy for a number of years now. What else is there really to say about him?
Well, it's such an extraordinary season for Connor McDavid. And I mean, he came into this season with unrealistically high expectations, and he somehow managed to exceed every one of them. He's got otherworldly acceleration. He can do things that are incredible at such a high rate of speed. He makes everybody else on the ice better, but his playmaking, his goal-scoring ability, elite level, the acceleration is just off the charts. And as for comparisons, I mean, the scouts I talked to, no one is going to say unequivocally that Connor McDavid is going to be better than Sidney Crosby, but just about every scout I talked to allows for that possibility. And that Connor McDavid's draft year was something we have maybe never seen before in terms of everything that he did beyond expectations.
OHL playoff MVP, CHL Player of the Year, 2.5 points per game. An incredible season for Connor McDavid. For the longest time, though, it was a debate. Would it be McDavid or would it be Jack Eichel? It was almost 1A, 1B. Well, Eichel looks like he's going number 2, but still another possible generational talent. Here he is on Bob's list.
Jack Eichel, the #1 challenger for Connor McDavid.
Wonderful play from Eichel as he plays it off the backboards to himself.
He makes it look exceedingly easy.
Jack Eichel with a great shot. Pretty feathery hands for Eichel. Scores! Jack Eichel, unbelievable! People want to see a little glimpse of what Jack Eichel can do. Watch this play. Oh my goodness. What a gorgeous goal.
Bob, there was no doubt that the Buffalo Sabres were upset that they didn't get that top pick. They didn't get Connor McDavid. I know their fan base was also upset, but at the end of the day, they're getting a pretty good player.
Yeah, not a consolation prize here. This is a generational talent. He's so big. He's so strong. He's got dynamic speed and power, but he's also got a high level of finesse and skill to go with it. And I mean, if Connor McDavid weren't in this draft and Jack Eichel were the #1 prospect, we would be talking about him in terms of draft prospects in the same breath as a Patrick Kane, a Steven Stamkos, a John Tavares. In fact, since Sidney Crosby was taken in #1 in the 2005 draft, talking to a number of scouts, they said that Jack Eichel is as good as any #1 pick, if not better, in terms of his draft year status going into the draft. And that obviously includes those guys I just talked about, including Kane, Stamkos, and Tavares. And this is a special player.
First freshman since Paul Kariya in 92-93 to win the Hobey Baker Award as the best NCAA player. Can't stress enough how good this 1-2 combo is, and we've seen it in the past where there have been other good 1-2 combos. Craig Button, what is the best 1-2 combination you have seen?
Great question, Nabil. Guy Lafleur and Marcel Dion in the 1971 draft, and they stand alone until further notice. Sam Pollock, the master GM of the Montreal Canadiens, he made many maneuvers to end up with the first overall pick because he wanted Guy Lafleur. Guy Lafleur was an all-star through the 70s, a dominant player, and a Hall of Famer. But Marcel Dion, the #2 overall pick, Hall of Famer himself and a top scorer, and no consolation prize at all when you talk about Marcel Dion. And now we go to #2, and we look at McDavid and Eichel and Ovechkin and Malkin, and it could be a dead heat. But not since the 1971 draft have we seen the maneuverings going on to get the first overall pick, albeit a little bit different with the term being tanking to get McDavid. Now you go to the 4th and 5th group, Steven Stamkos and Drew Doughty. Doughty with 2 Stanley Cups, Olympic gold medals. John Tavares and Victor Hedman trying to break into that group. That's 4 and 5. But when you look at a 1-2 punch, these are 5 terrific duos. And McDavid and Eichel very well could be #1, but that time hasn't arrived yet.
Well, in any other draft year, we'd probably be gushing over Noah Hanifin, the American defenseman who plays for Boston College, has been considered by scouts as the best defenseman coming into this draft pretty much all year. He's #3 on Bob's list.
Noah Hanifin, an outstanding skater in every single regard.
Great chance in front created by Hanifin. He goes through the neutral zone so quickly.
And Hanifin shoots. He scores!
That's the first time I've seen what the hype is about with Noah Hanifin.
So what does Noah Hanifin bring to the table?
Well, he's a 6'3" defenseman who skates like Scott Niedermayer, so say no more. I mean, also a 17-year-old freshman at Boston College, can get the puck up and out and up the ice as quick and as fast as anybody. Likes to jump into the rush as well. He can also light people up physically at 6'3". He plays a strong defensive game. There are some scouts, 7 of the 10 scouts I surveyed have him as the #3 prospect behind McDavid and Eichel. There are some who think Ivan Provorov from the Brandon Wheat Kings might bypass him in this draft because Provorov's got such outstanding offensive ability. But Hanifin is the clear consensus #3 and a tremendous skater and potential offensive defenseman.
Well, the London Knights have pumped out some great players over the years. Mitch Marner falls into that category. He is #4 on Bob's list.
Mitch Marner walks in and scores. Dale Hunter said, keep an eye out for this guy.
Great poise and an elusiveness that makes him very difficult to keep in check.
Marner in on goal, goes top shelf, he scores!
He will become an impact player.
So, Bob, what's the biggest asset that's going to make him that impact player?
Huge wow factor. Just unbelievable skill. Makes everybody else on the ice better. He's dynamic. He's very quick, nifty. Think Patrick Kane in some ways. Think Claude Giroux. A scoring winger, a playmaking winger. Could potentially be a center one day. But he's got that wow factor. He just is able to do things on the ice that nobody else is able to do and be very prolific in doing so.
Well, you would think the Erie Otters record for assists and points would go to Connor McDavid, but it actually goes to his buddy Dylan Strome, who's a huge presence up the middle. He's number 5 on Bob's list.
Strome shoots, he scores.
A good, crisp wrist shot.
He reads the play.
Great stick by Dylan Strome to steal the puck.
In all of the game's important situations, he will find a way.
Reaches forward and scores. Strome ties it.
Dylan Strome with a blast.
He scores again. What a game for Dylan Strome. Strome is the OHL scoring champion.
Well, NHL teams are always looking for that big prototypical center, and this might be the guy.
Oh, absolutely. 6'3" center, savvy, makes plays as well as scores goals. The OHL scoring champion. Not as much wow factor as a guy like Mitch Marner, but real heady and able to make everybody else on the ice better. Did not have a particularly strong playoff. He's not the fastest skater in the world. It looked to me like he ran out of gas in the playoffs a little bit. But his older brother, Ryan, plays for the New York Islanders. A lot of similarities between the two, and he's got elite-level offensive ability.
We look at those 5 players, incredible amount of talent. Let's take a look at the top 5 on Bob's list. Connor McDavid will be the 11th player to go number 1 in the CHL and NHL drafts. And how about Dylan Strome? Remember, his brother Ryan was picked number 5 in the 2011 draft. Let's look at 6 through 10. At 7, Lawson Krause. Central Scouting rated him a perfect 10 in physical play and competitiveness. Connor McDavid was the only other player to receive a 10 in an individual skill rating. And Matthew Barzal, the number 1 pick, remember back in the 2012 WHL Bantam Draft. But Ivan Provorov, that is a name that is intriguing a lot of people, Bob.
Well, it really is. Provorov might have more offensive ceiling in terms of being a prolific offensive defenseman than Noah Hanifin, the Russian, who played so well at the World Junior Championship and played such a strong two-way game, almost a point-a-game player for the Brandon Wheat Kings. A lot of scouts do like him, and he is the guy from 6 to 10 who's got the best chance of unseating somebody in the top 5 and potentially knocking Hanifin out of the top defenseman role in this draft.
Well, we talk about the talent in the top 10. There's a lot of talent in the later part of the draft, too. Coming up on the draft preview show, we continue ranking the rest of the top 20. And Connor McDavid, a little later on, will join Bob McKenzie to talk about going number 1 and his favorite goal. There's lots to choose from. That's coming up. Welcome back to Bob McKenzie's Draft Preview Show. Well, let's take a look at the order for the middle 10 teams. And 2 teams that really stick out at number 13, Los Angeles, number 14, Boston. 2 teams that traditionally go pretty deep into the playoffs this year didn't make it and now get 2 pretty good picks at 13 and 14. Let's take a look now at Bob's list for 11 to 15. Zach Werenski, the American defenseman. He was the youngest player in NCAA Division I hockey, played the entire season as a 17-year-old. And how about Travis Konechny, the number 1 pick in the 2013 OHL draft? You also see at number 12 there. Timo Meier and the Halifax Mooseheads have another golden prospect in this kid, don't they, Bob?
Well, they most certainly do. And Timo Meier plays a big, hard, heavy game. 6'1", over 200 pounds, and he can score. 44 goals on the season. Halifax Mooseheads continue to produce elite-level talent. You, of course, had Nate McKinnon, Jonathan Drouin, Nikolai Ehlers. Meier played on a line with Ehlers much of the season, but was able to forge his own identity in terms of a guy who's got a really big shot and is going to play a hard physical game to get to the spots where he needs to score goals.
Let's take a look at 16 to 20 on Bob's list. The talent really doesn't drop off. There are a lot of good players up for grabs, including Nick Merkley at 17. He was the WHL Rookie of the Year in 2013-2014. And how about this story? Ilya Samsonov, the Russian goaltender, at 19. He rose from number 70 in Bob's midseason rankings to number 19. It's interesting. He's a goalie in the first round. That's enough. And then now you got him as a Russian goalie. You don't see that very often.
No, you don't. Keep in mind, of course, that Andrei Vasilevsky, the Tampa Bay Lightning, took him 19th overall in 2012. And there are a lot of comparisons between Samsonov and Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky was much more accomplished at the same age, but the scouts believe Samsonov could be that foundation number 1 franchise-type goaltender. But there is the Russian factor at work here. He did not attend the National Hockey League Central Scouting Combine. That scared some people. The fact that he's under contract to a team in the KHL, that will worry some people. But in terms of being the undisputed #1 goaltender in this draft, most of the scouts would say this is the guy.
Part of the drafting process is the attention you get. And Connor McDavid, I interviewed him for the first time for myself about 3 years ago. He was quiet. He was shy. There weren't too many reporters there. But over the years, these scrums have gotten bigger and bigger, and Connor McDavid has matured in front of our eyes. Here he is with Bob McKenzie.
I know that Edmonton hasn't officially declared that you're the #1 pick, and you're not presumptuous enough to say you're going to be the #1. Let's put all that aside for a moment. What's it going to mean to you to be an Edmonton Oiler?
If I'm fortunate enough to be drafted by them, I mean, it'll be a tremendous honor. I mean, you look at the history of all the cups and all the greats who have gone through there. I'm so looking forward to the opportunity that that could be where I'm headed.
Connor, I know there was a picture from last week with Wayne Gretzky, yourself, and Sidney Crosby, and everybody immediately dubbed it the past, present, and future of hockey. When people talk about that in those terms, how does that make you feel?
It's so humbling, obviously, to be with those guys and just talk to them and get a chance to meet them. I mean, it's some big shoes to fill.
I think any #1 overall pick faces huge amounts of pressure, but when you get labeled a generational talent, those things are sky high. And for what it's worth, I mean, I thought you came into this year with unrealistically high expectations, and you managed to exceed those, if that's possible. How do you deal with the pressures and that level of expectation?
There's a lot of people who put these expectations on you, and whether you meet them or not, that's for them to decide. So you just got to be confident in yourself and believe in your abilities. And you said that you didn't even think I could have a year like I had this year or anything like that. And I just believe that it was possible, and I was able to string together what was a pretty good year. So it's just believing in yourself and your abilities.
In your first OHL season, you got the picture taken with Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby. If you were to look at that picture now, what would the Connor McDavid of today tell that kid about navigating the next couple of years in the Ontario Hockey League?
Maybe mix up your hair a little bit more. I think I looked pretty dumb. I mean, whether this hair has been any better, I don't know. But the hair in that picture was pretty stupid. I guess that would be the only thing.
You scored 97 OHL regular season goals. Nice round number. I don't know if you arranged that or not. And I know you got 25 more in the playoffs. I know your dad, Brian's favorite goal that you scored was one very early in your first season against the London Knights. Why do you think that goal was special to him? And can you talk a little bit about why that was maybe a special goal for you too? It
was kind of very early on in my career, and we were playing what was a pretty stacked London team. I mean, that shift I was against Scott Harrington and Ole Matt. I was just a little 15-year-old kid out there and just trying to do my thing, and was fortunate to get by a couple of 19, 20-year-old studs. So I think it might be why my dad likes it. And for me, it was special just because it was so early on, and you're playing the historic London Knights and all that. So it was exciting.
What would be your personal favorite? And I should point out, do you remember all your goals? Like Steven Stamkos has a photographic memory, can basically tell you every single goal that he's ever scored. Are you the same? And do you have one that stands out for you?
I would say my favorite one would have just been this year in the last playoffs against the Sioux. I think that one was just in a big moment.
Short-handed breakaway.
Short-handed breakaway. In your own rink, the crowd was going nuts, and you put on what was a pretty nice goal. I think that one was probably my favorite. I
think it's fair to say that you and Jack Eichel are rivals. You're going to be forever linked because of this draft. 1-2 in this draft. There's also the Canada-US angle from the World Junior Championship. I know you got to spend some time with Jack at the Cup final, maybe for the first time to get to know him a little bit. How do you view that rivalry?
We're going to be linked together for a while, and that's just how it is. And it's nice. I mean, he's a great player, and he I got to meet him a little bit. And he seems like a really good guy. So, it's